Welcome to this episode of Interview with an Evolver, and I am so stoked to be having a conversation today with the beautiful Riannah Roach. How are you today, Riannah?
I'm good, Juliet. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited.
Yeah, your journey has been just from my perspective so cool to watch from the outside in, and I thought it would be fantastic to dive into that a little bit today, find out, what that journey has been like for you, what has evolved for you since, I guess, embarking on our studies and our courses, and also dive into advice or support for people in our community and new coaches. So let's start off with maybe just introducing for people who don't know you yet. Who are you and what do you do in the world right now?
Well, my name's Rihanna, and what do I do in the world? I currently work as a coach and a hypnotherapist, and also am writing my third book at the moment. So I guess you could say an author. Always feels weird saying that. But I work with both men and women now. And while I'm doing a lot of work around masculinity and femininity at the moment, but I guess we'll dive into this in a moment, but my business has evolved many times over the course of a few years. And I work a lot, particularly with women, around breaking ancestral chains, I guess you could call it, or breaking cycles and patterns that are often passed down through the generations, particularly in the maternal line. So that's, I guess, where I do a lot of the work at the moment.
I love that. I mean, that's always fascinating when, we have people say in our trainings and courses who will actually discover a root cause pattern or belief or emotional block that is passed down generationally or even in the womb. And so I
Yeah.
love that that's where you're diving with people because there is so much gold in there. And so for the
Mm.
who haven't maybe seen your journey or known, how would you describe where things were at before you came across our courses?
Well, prior to doing NLP, which is the first course I did with Paul and Juliet, I guess I was a completely different person, and my life was completely different. I was working a government job and had been for 14 years. I was in a relationship with my children's father. I was living the perfect, or what looked like the perfect life, I guess, on paper. I had everything that I ever had wanted, but I was just so desperately unhappy. And I didn't know why I was unhappy, and I felt very ungrateful that I was unhappy because I had so much in my life to be thankful for. I had kids. I think I had two kids by then. And I just was, I don't know, I was so unhappy. So when I went in and did NLP, I guess it was the first time that I started to uncover who I am and what I actually want from my life, not what society or my parents or anything like that had said that my life needed to look like. So it began the journey of uncovering the real me.
Wow. Yeah. I think you know, that journey, I don't know. I want to go there actually. I
Okay.
think maybe some people think their whole life is going to change when they do study NLP because they hear stories like mine and like yours, like that, like I quit my job, I left my marriage, all that stuff. And
Yes.
and I think, we were sort of talking about how people kind of get what they need to from it. But for you,
Yes.
like, tell me, what was it that gave you that nudge? Like, it's a brave step to take to go, I'm just going to go into this thing that I don't know what's on the other side of it. Like you said, you were really unhappy. Like, how was that
Really.
manifesting for you? What was actually happening for you?
I guess, well, I remember booking a phone call with you. Well, I had originally booked in to do a Reiki course because I wanted to do something to start exploring, me, I guess. And Reiki at the time was cancelled because of COVID. And I remember this is what was in my head. I'm like, I remember there's a blonde lady on Instagram. She runs some course, some self-development course. This was you. I couldn't remember your name, but I remember I followed you, and so did Jason McGrice. So I went and looked you up, and I guess I got to the point where I was desperate. I was desperate for change. I didn't know, what change I needed. I didn't know how to go about it. And I was living in fear, if you like, of just life. And I guess I think I was crying like most days. And I remember when I booked the call with you, I was crying, and telling you about my life and how shitty it was, when in reality, it wasn't really that shitty. But I remember you said something to me, and I even wrote this in my first book. It's like you said, you can change. And I was like, Oh, wow. Okay. And I guess so I'd got to the point in my life where I was ready for change. And that's why NLP gave me the permission, if you like, to create that change. But I often say the same thing to people that come and work with me. Change is only there if you need it or want it. Like you don't have to blow up your life like I did. Like I quit the job, I ended a relationship, I sold a house, I did it all, but you don't have to do that. If it's in alignment with, your where you're at, then you don't have to change anything. So
I can't imagine you hiding in a government job. It's almost like you have to put on all of these layers and masks, don't you, to fit into
yes.
those spaces. And then I think what you touched on, which I think is so powerful, is like that permission piece that you had to actually start figuring out, like, who am I? What do I want to do? And to start actually taking steps towards that. And it's like everything that's not the true you just has to fall away, and it's not a scary thing. I think maybe for people looking from the outside in, it can look pretty full on. But
Yes.
when you're living it and you know what that discord or that feeling of being out of alignment is like,
Mm.
getting that permission to finally start putting pieces together and taking steps towards alignment, I think is such.
Yeah, it's like a feeling of relief. It's like, oh my God, this actually feels good. Like you still have to go through the bumpiness, obviously, but once you start to settle again, it's like this feels good now. And so different to what it did before. So it's nice.
Yeah. And it's funny when you talk about that first conversation. Like for me, you've always been Riannah. Like this is the you that I've always talked to, and
Yeah.
and that's sometimes I think interesting, because when you can see beyond and past people's layers and illusions and blocks, and you can just see their potential, that
Mhm.
people can step towards that. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
So, sounds like a big journey that you've obviously been on, and that was what, 4 years ago?
Must have been what, 2020 or 2021? 2020. I'm not sure now. But it was COVID time when COVID first started. So yeah.
Amazing. And then so tell me about the journey then, from quitting corporate to starting your coaching business, to then, I know you've studied all of the courses that we have on offer. So tell me
Yeah.
a bit about that journey over the last few years then for you in the transition.
Well, I guess I went into NLP initially as a self-development. I had no intention of becoming a coach initially, and then after NLP, I couldn't not go do masters of NLP straight away, and that's when I knew that I couldn't go back to corporate. So, um, yes, I thought, well, I've got this, qualification behind me. I can now go and be a coach. So I started on the journey of coaching, and I guess I started working only with women because it felt most comfortable for me to only work with women at the time. And I guess my business has been on a real, it keeps evolving. Actually, it's still evolving at the moment. But I started working with women mainly around confidence, I think, because that's, where I started. I needed confidence to live my life. And so I started working in the confidence space. And then I started to evolve from there. So I've done a lot of work around emotions, helping women with emotions mainly. And then it's just kept evolving. And every time I did a course with you guys, I stepped up again and started to evolve my business, but evolve myself. So it was every time I evolved, my business evolved. And I forgot what the question was, but I've just kept going down that path of evolving. And now, I evolved to the point where I felt like I was ready to work with men. And so I started to work with men as well. And that's been a lot of fun to get to that point that I've been working with both men and women now.
I agree. I think you, as a coach, it's so beautiful to see the differences in dynamics and
Mm.
what their needs are as well,
Yeah.
and playing with that. The transition, I think, for some people who study courses, they can, like, as you talked about, like as you evolved yourself, your business evolved. What was it
Mm.
for you that really allowed you to start seeing your first clients, and still consistently to this day be having a regular stream of clients? Like, what are some of the things that you've really put into practice that you think helps attract those people into your world, and maintain that consistency in your business, even though it's
I
evolved?
guess right at the start, particularly, I just wanted to work, and I just wanted to get experience, if you like, under my belt. So I said yes to anyone and everything, if you like, and it built my confidence up. It gave me a greater experience. So I was just saying yes, 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 and right at the start, I offered cheaper prices just to get people coming in. And the thing that really has helped me is being consistent on social media as well. It's really the only way, other than referrals, that I advertise. And it's consistency, just showing up no matter what, and making sure that people know you're there. But it's not about selling anything. It's about, talking about my experience more so, and talking about, if clients are happy for me to talk about it, talking about clients' experience. Because if people can see, the results that you get, whether it be mine or someone else's, then, that is selling. But I definitely don't do any of the, the real pointed, hey, come join my program stuff. But I'm very consistent on social media. So that's definitely helped.
I agree. I think you are your like walking, talking, breathing business card and results. And that's how you magnetize people towards you. So then let me ask you this. What do you think of the like, join my program and you'll make 6 figures in 6 weeks? Talk to me about that. What's your perspective on
Oh goodness, it's well, I've really, I guess I've joined people's programs that have pitched that, particularly at the start when I started my business, because I felt like I needed some business support. And the reality is, if people are pitching that as the end result, it's not the end result for a lot of people. So I think you have to really be careful on who you go to based on what they're selling. I think it's the person. If you click with the person that's running a program, I think you're going to get a whole lot more out of whatever program it is, as opposed to, what they're telling you you're going to get out of it. I feel like if the person is embodying what they're talking about, which is what I've tried to do, now more so than ever, then you're more guaranteed to get the better results than someone who's just using big words and telling you're going to get 6 figures and things like that, because it doesn't happen like that for everyone.
Yeah. It's interesting because, we all see different things out there in the industry. And I think if there's people in our community watching this, there's a lot of different marketing styles. And, I think from our perspective and what we talk about, say, in our business builder and things, is the best advertising you've got is your own results and being that expression of it. And if people can see that you're embodying it exactly as you said, then they'll be drawn to it as well. So I think, I think
and you can actually feel it. Even when people talk about what they're doing, you can feel it. Like, there's a couple of people who I did training with, like Amelia Hellier, and I'm like, you can feel her energy. She's got it going on. So if you want someone to work with, go with someone like that in business, as opposed to someone who's just using the big words.
Yes.
So
exactly, we had her on a couple of months ago, so you
can good
if anyone's keen for that one. So what would you then say then to that woman who is in the corporate grind, in the life that you were in, maybe not as desperately unhappy? Because I do want to add a caveat to the fact that I think sometimes the worst things are, that's a good thing, because it kind of can catapult you then into transition and change. And so there's some people who are kind of in that just so-ness of life where they feel like there could be more, but they're maybe in a bit of a comfort zone, but they know they're in the corporate grind and they want some changes, but they're not sure what kind of advice or guidance would you have for women or men who are in that space?
Definitely. Well, I would say go do NLP, the first course, and it doesn't mean that you have to quit your job, but it's just going to free your mind up, and free you up to think more clearly, and to really recognize what it is you want. And I mean, the reality is that a lot of people stay in their corporate jobs for years after doing these courses, but then one day, if it's right, then maybe you want to change. But even if you don't want to change your job, I would say still go do it, because it's just so freeing to be able to think, clearly for once, as opposed to being, I don't even know what the word is, but I felt like I used to have this cloak of I don't know, something over me that I couldn't think clearly for myself. And I was just so heavy from the past that, NLP helped me open my eyes to what's possible. I guess that's what it gave me, that the whole world, there's this, so much opportunity out there. And you can still have your corporate job, but you can go do other things at the same time and bring in more joy and happiness and fun, as opposed to just having a ho-hum life.
And
I would believe anyway.
And I would add study NLP with us.
Oh, definitely. Yes. And yes.
Sometimes we actually,
I think that's a given.
Well, sometimes we make that mistake. We'll talk about studying NLP in general terms. And it's so funny because you know, from my perspective, I thought that NLP was NLP. And it wasn't until actually I did my trainer's training that I realized how much Paul has actually evolved and enhanced and adapted the way that we teach, and the things that we teach, and the layers and frames, and the deep personal responsibility around transformation of yourself. Whereas there are a lot of NLP trainings out there where you'll get the piece of paper, but you won't necessarily have that embodied transformation. And I think that's something we're really proud of. So I'll just slip that in there, because I got to.
No, it's so true though. I mean, I've had clients come to me who have done NLP training. I'm like, why are you here if you've done NLP training? Like, shouldn't you have dealt with, you know, this stuff? And it's like they hadn't dealt with anything. And I was like, okay, well, let's start from the start then. So yes. I do believe, yes, I would definitely recommend your course.
Well, thanks. Oh, thank you. I wanted to add that in as a little caveat. Yeah. Sometimes I think it's really easy. And I think these days as well, there's like $7 NLP courses online, but it's the same. Okay. It's not the same experience. So yeah. So that's cool. So now you're diving in, your business is evolving, as it will continue to do, but you're diving into the realms of masculinity and femininity. So talk a little bit about that, and what are some of the things that you're exploring and supporting people through?
Yeah, definitely. So it started, I guess, with myself. You know, I realized over the course of the last few years that I had been living more in my masculine. For those of you who don't know, we all have masculine and feminine traits and energy within us. And I'd been living more in my masculine. So, you know, I rejected all things feminine, I realized, and that stemmed from my childhood. And so I began the journey of building, firstly, my femininity, or building some sort of strength in my femininity. And I began to uncover, you know, how good that feels in your body. So that included changing my life. It included slowing down. It included, you know, things such as speaking up, and lots of other stuff. You know, I completely changed the way I dress, the way I look, everything. But then as I dove into that, I realized that, you know, a lot of men need a little hand around the masculinity side of things as well, because, you know, this is a bigger topic, I guess, in itself. But in society, a lot of us are quite lost. You know, we don't know what masculine looks like because we haven't had any role models, many of us. And we don't know what feminine looks like because, again, we haven't had many role models with our mothers and fathers. So I started talking about the masculinity, and obviously I'm not a man to, you know, so I can't teach from an embodied sense in regards to masculinity with men, but I'm able to talk through and to help hold space for them while they explore that themselves. And a lot of men that I've worked with in the masculine space, I've then gone on to refer to men who are actually teaching masculinity in an embodied way. So I'm sort of like the stepping stone for a lot of men, and then they go off and learn a bit more from actual men. But with women, it's fun, and it's you know, it's scary for a lot of women to begin to let down these walls of protection that we've formed over time, because that's what it is. It's just layers of protection, and to be feminine, you have to be vulnerable, and you know, it's a bit scary in this world, but it feels good at the same time.
And I want to circle back to what you're talking about with the masculine, you know, being a mother of boys. I can imagine for you, this is such a doubly important message for you to, well, the boys that you're raising in this world, what is their balance, and what is their perspective, and what are they bringing out to the world as well? And yeah, I agree. So I want to thank you for sharing and shining your light, and for being someone who just, you know, continues to be on that journey of evolving yourself, evolving your business. You are an amazing advocate in our community. I know we refer lots of people to you because you do such work as well. So if anyone is looking for a coach, Riannah is on our graduate directory, and I'll put the links in the show notes as well. She's fantastic. I know you do online and in-person work as well. The last thing I wanted to talk about, at the start, you introduced yourself as a coach, hypnotherapist, and an author. You are writing your third book. You've been in my Birth Your Book course for a couple of years now. I'm partway through your beautiful second book, your Prepare for Pregnancy book. Your first book, The She Within, was just so special. I loved, you know, the way you wrote the short chapters, things like that. What is your third book about, and when can people expect it if you're working towards a time?
My third book is still evolving. So it's called She Remembers, and it's a bit of a play on the word she, with she and he in that word. But it's basically it's going to be a book that explores breaking down, well, I'm calling it going rogue against the matrix. Matrix underneath as the subtitle. And the Matrix itself, I'm talking a little bit about society, how we sort of get conditioned to live a certain life. Obviously I did, but also the matrix within ourselves, so breaking down layers of conditioning. It also will explore the spiritual side of things, so talking about the soul. So I'll be talking a little bit about that, talking about masculinity and femininity. So there is a whole timeline of events that's going to be in this book. I'm also talking about things like the patriarchy. So it's a very varied book, but it will make sense once it's there. But it's about remembering who we are and remembering that we're so much more than just this body that we live in. You know, we're spiritual beings, and we're here to live an amazing life. And that's ultimately what this book is about. Live your life as you choose, and love it, every moment of it, because it's quite short.
Absolutely. And I remember you sharing a snippet on the last night of our writers retreat a couple of weeks ago, actually. And I think what I find with the way that you approach concepts that could be quite heavy or large, I think you bring a lightness and a realness and a real, a gentle way of bringing very complex concepts to light, and not simplifying them, but kind of illuminating them and having people look at them without heaviness or judgment. So I think you write beautifully.
That's my aim.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely achieving it. So absolutely.
Thank you.
Exciting. Well, thank you so much. And is there any other kind of parting words, any other advice, or anything else you want to share before we wrap up today?
No, I think if you're just for those that are starting as a coach, I think just believe in yourself and say yes to everything at the start. Eventually you'll find what feels good for you. And just reach out to obviously this community if you need a hand, because everyone's so open and so welcoming and so helpful within this space, and always willing to offer suggestions and help. So reach out if you need a hand.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, thank you so much. It was beautiful speaking to you today.
Thanks, Juliet.